In this video, we're going to look at how to work out a percentage of an amount. Okay, you need to know that percent means out of 100. So you can work out 10% of an amount if you divide that amount by 10. The reason is because there are 10 lots of tens in 100. So then if you want to work out 5%, okay, you simply divide by 20 because there are 20 lots of fives in 100. Or you could do it in steps. You can, for example, work out 10% first, so that's when you divide by 10, and then just half it because 5 is a half of 10, so then just divide by 2. Okay, and sometimes depending on the number, it might be actually easier to do it in 2 steps than in 1 step by dividing by 20. Okay, so then if you want to work out 1%, you simply divide by 100. If you want to work out 20%, you divide by 5 because you have 5 lots of 20s in 100. If you want to work out 25%, you simply divide by 4 because you have 4 lots of 25s, and if you want to work out 50%, you divide by 2 because you have 2 lots of 50s, or in other words, 50 obviously is a half of 100. Okay, and very often you can do it in multiple ways, just like for example with 20%, I could also divide by 10 first to find 10% and then times it by 2 because to get 20 I need to times 10 by 2. Okay, so sometimes there's different ways how you can get to the same number. So let's have a look at some examples. So if you want to work out 10% of 70, so I know that to work out 10%, I need to divide by 10. So 70 divided by 10 is simply 7. Okay, so that's £7. If I want to work out 5% of 140, I could divide by 20. Okay, so 140 divided by 20, I could get rid of the zeros. Okay, that is also 7. If I want to work out 1% of 96, so I need to divide 96 by 100. Okay, and that is 0.96. Remember, you need to move the decimal point to the left twice. Okay, now to find 20% of 80, you need to divide 80 by 5, and this is what I said earlier. Sometimes it might be easier to do it in 2 steps than in 1 step. Okay, if your numeracy skills are a little bit better, you may find it very easy to calculate this. Notice that you need to be able to do those calculations without a calculator, so sometimes it might be easier to do it in 2 steps. So I'm going just to show you how to do it in 2 steps. Okay, so to find 10%, okay, so 10%, you know that we'll have to divide it by 10. So 80 divided by 10 is 8. Okay, now because I have 20%, so that's twice as much, so I need to then times 8 by 2, which is 16. Okay, so the answer is 16. Okay, and if you can divide 80 by 5 easily, you also get 16. Okay, but it might be sometimes easier to do it in 2 steps. Then to work out 25% of 64, so you know that you need to divide 64 by 4. Okay, so 64 divided by 4 is 16. And then for the last one, you need to find 50% of 364. Okay, now remember that 50% is simply a half, and that's £182. Okay. Now let's have a look at some more examples. Okay, so I have 10% of 60. To work out 10%, I divide by 10, so that is 60 divided by 10, which is 6. To find 5% of 60, I simply divide by 20. Okay, and then the answer is 3, or I could half 10%. You can see that 5 is the half of 10, and then obviously 3 is the half of 6. Okay, so you can do it in multiple ways. Now to find 1% of 60, I need to divide it by 100, and that is 0.6. To find 20%, okay, of 60, we need to divide by 5, remember, because there is 5 lots of 20s in 100, okay, and that is 12. To find 25% of 60, we need to divide by 4, okay, because we have 4 lots of 25s in 100, and that is 15. And then to find 2.5% of 60, okay, so when you look at the last two, okay, you can see that 2.5 is 10 times less than 25. Okay, so what I could do, I can divide 15 by 10, okay, because that is, so 15 divided by 10, and that is 1.5. Okay, now I can use those, okay, to work out some other percentages, like for example 15. Okay, now because 15 doesn't really go into 100 without a remainder, so I can't really get it by dividing the amount by a number, so I can do it in multiple steps. So I already know that 10%, okay, of 60 is 6, and 5% of 60 is 3. So if I add 10% and 5%, I will get 15. Okay, so if I add 6 and 3, I get 9, which is 15% of 60. Okay, so to get 15%, I can add 10% plus 5%, okay, which is 6 plus 3, which gives us 9. If I want to work out 35% of 60, okay, I can think about how I can make that number. Okay, so on the left, I already have 10%, I've got 20%, and I've got 5%. So I can, when I add those numbers, okay, I can work out what 35% of 60 is. I could also simply multiply, okay, 10% by 3. So I could do 3 times 10%, and then add 5%. Okay, so that's 3 times 10%. Okay, we can see that is 6. So that's 3 times 6, and then add 5%, which is 3. Okay, and that's 18 plus 3, that's 21. Okay, the next question, I've got 3% of 60. So I can work out 3% by multiplying, okay, 1% by 3. I already know that 1%, okay, is 0.6. So 3 times 0.6 is 1.8. If I want to work out 70% of 60, okay, I can multiply 7 times 10. Okay, working out 10% is quite straightforward, so then I need to times it by 7. Okay, so 7 times, and then 10% is 6. So 7 times 6 is 42. Then we've got 75% of 60. Okay, again, there's multiple ways how you could do this. Okay, you can work out, for example, 50% and then 25% and just add them together. Okay, or you could work out 70% and 5% and add them together. Okay, I already have 70% from my previous example. Okay, but I'm just going to show you again how you do this. So it's 7 times 10, that gives you 70%, and then you add the 5%. Okay, so that's 42. I've got this from my previous question, and then add 5%, which is 3, so that is 45. Okay, and one more. I've got 12.5% of 60. So I can do this by working out 10% and then 2.5%. Okay, and now I know that 10% is 6, 2.5% is 1.5, so the answer is 7.5. Now we're going to look at, again, some less common percentages. Okay, so first I need to work out 15% of 44. I can do this by working out 10%, then 5%, and then I need to add them together. So to work out 10%, I need to divide the number by 10, so that's going to be 4.4. Now 5% is a half of 10, so that's going to be a half of 4.4, which is 2.2. Okay, now I need to add the two numbers, so that's 10 plus 5%, okay, which is 6.6. To work out 22% of 80, I can work out 20%, 1%, and then 2%, okay? So again, this is not the only way to do this, because you could work out 20% and then 2% as well. So to work out 20%, remember we need to divide the amount by 5, okay, and 80 divided by 5 is 16, okay. To work out 1%, okay, we divide by 100, which is 0.8, and then I can double 1% to get 2%, and that is 1.6. I could also skip that middle step, okay, and I could compare 20% and 2%. Okay, 2% is 10 times less than 20%, so it will be 10 times less than 16, so that is 1.6. So I could go here, okay, that's dividing by 10, and that's dividing by 10, okay. Now I need to add 20% and 2%, so I need to add 16 and 1.6, and that is 17.6. To work out 65% of 96, I can find 10%, okay, then 60%, and then 5%, okay. Now I start with 10% because that's the easiest to work out, okay. So 10% of 96 is 9.6, okay, we divide by 10, so that's 9.6. Now to get 60%, I have to times it by 6, okay, this is 6 times more, okay, so I need to times it by 6, so 9.6 times 6, okay, 6 times 6 is 36, so we put 6 here, we carry the 3, 6 times 9 is 54, plus 3 is 57, so that's 57.6, and then 5%, okay, is a half of 10, so it's a half of 9.6, so that is 4.9. Now to work out 65%, I need to add 60% and 5%. So I want to add 57.6 and 4.8. Okay, remember to line up the numbers so that the points are lined up. 6 plus 8 is 14. We carry the 1. 1 plus 7 is 8. Plus 4 is 12. We carry the 1, and that is 6. That is 62.4. Okay, and then for the last example, okay, I can start with 10%, 5%, and 2.5%, okay, because when I add those numbers, then I'll get 17.5%. So you need to think about how you can make that number. Okay, now to work out 10%, we simply divide by 10, so that is 24. Now 5% is a half of 10, so that's 12. And then 2.5 is a half of 5, so that's 6. And to work out 17.5% of 240, we just need to add all the numbers. So that's 24 plus 12 plus 6, that is 42.